Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, Simple Technology to Apply to Workplace Ergonomics, a case study in TuMeke. As many of you know, Amerisure is one of the nation's leading providers of commercial insurance. We specialize in managing risk for businesses in construction, manufacturing, and healthcare, and we're licensed to conduct business in all 50 states. And we've been in business for over 100 years, if you can believe that. There are nearly 700 Amerisure employees with our headquarters located in Farmington Hills, Michigan. And we have 12 strategically located core service centers around the country. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the Q&A box. You do have the option to submit your questions anonymously if you choose to do that, and then I'll bring them up at the end of our presentation. Due to the number of attendees and to avoid background interference, all attendees are muted and will remain muted for the duration of the webinar. Please be aware that this webinar is for general information only. It's not intended to provide specific solutions for any potentially unsafe conditions and should not be relied upon for legal advice. You're advised to consult with an attorney to address any particular circumstance you might have. And Amerisure assumes no duty or obligation to any party in providing this information. So our presenters today are Stacy Mitchell, and unfortunately, Kathleen Babylon was not able to join us today due to unforeseen circumstances. So I'm going to be stepping in for her on this one. So just to introduce Stacy first, Stacy's been with Amerisure for over 18 years, and she's based in our Farmington Hills, Michigan office. She holds a degree in communications, and she has over 25 years of field experience. My name's Anjali Hutchison. I am the manager for risk management out of the Dallas office for Amerisure. I've been with Amerisure for going on 6 years now, and I have over 15 years of experience in occupational safety and health and risk management. We're so glad to be here with you today, and we have a wealth of knowledge to share. So without further ado, I'm going to turn over our time to Stacy.
Thank you, Anjali. So what are our course objectives? So today we're going to talk about ergonomics. What are they and how do they affect your workplace? What are the expenses of poor ergonomic activities that lead to MSDs or musculoskeletal disorders? We're also going to discuss a specific technology in this presentation called TuMeke, and then review several case studies using TuMeke. Lastly, we'll discuss other technologies that are used to evaluate ergonomic exposures and look at how they can be used in several different industries. So let's review a scenario. A 24-year-old male construction worker was loading up his hand tools. He was picking up the tools and then loading them up into the flatbed of his pickup truck. In doing this activity, he injured his back. So we're going to take a minute and ask you, how expensive do you think this back injury is? Is it $1,200, $9,000, $90,000, or $900,000?
And we have some, everybody's kind of answering right now. It looks like we're about 80% in. So we'll give you all a few more seconds just to think this little trivia question through. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and share the results with you here. And Stacy, it looks like the majority of people think that it is $90,000.
$90,000. Well, surprisingly, it is $900,000. So this twisting and lifting motion actually led to 2 different back surgeries. So it just goes to show you that poor ergonomic exposures can certainly lead to significant workers' compensation claims. So thank you for that. So when most people hear ergonomics, they think of office workers and sitting at a desk, but it applies to all workers and all jobs in some way, shape, or form. So really, what is ergonomics? It is the study of people in their working environment. It's used to design or modify the work to fit the worker in order to eliminate the risk of injury. So in the workplace, ergonomics helps adapt the job to fit the worker rather than force the worker to fit the job. In doing this, it helps reduce stress and eliminate many potential injuries associated with the overuse of muscles, bad posture, and repetitive motion. This is completed by designing tasks, workstations, controls, displays, safety devices, tools, lighting, and equipment to actually fit the worker's physical capabilities and also their limitations. So remember, with any of these solutions we are describing, we are just trying to get the worker to align as closely back to a neutral position as possible. The joints and muscles of the body naturally align to provide for comfort and efficiency of movement. Assuming those awkward postures and engaging in processes that do not conform to the body's natural alignment can lead to injuries and the development of musculoskeletal disorders. The neutral posture for each muscle group is the body position that minimizes awkwardness and maximizes the body's performance. And that's what we want, right? So neutral posture allows the body to achieve the greatest force potential with balance and control. So for instance, think of a golfer's swing that can be improved by correctly aligning his or her torso and arms pre-swing. So in the workplace, ergonomic design should ensure that workers can maintain a neutral position as much as possible. The best neutral position will vary based on the specific task that an employee is performing. As we go through many of these solutions, you may find one solution that will correct or reduce many sprains or strain hazards. So what is a musculoskeletal disorder, or MSD? MSDs are a grouping of related injuries, sometimes referred to as ergonomic injuries. MSDs generally occur when a worker uses muscles, tendons, and ligaments to perform tasks in awkward positions or in frequent activities that, over time, create pain and injury. They are defined by the Bureau of Labor Statistics as the combination of certain injuries or illnesses and events or exposures. So what are some characteristics of musculoskeletal disorders? The nature of the injury must be a pinched nerve, a herniated disc, a meniscus tear, sprain, strains, or tears, hernias, pain, swelling, and numbness, carpal tunnel syndrome, or other musculoskeletal system and connective tissue diseases and disorders. In addition, one of the following events or exposures must lead to the injury or illness: overexertion and bodily reaction, repetitive motion involving microtasks, other multiple exertions or bodily reactions, or rubbed, abraded, or jarred by vibration. As we discussed MSDs, another term I'm going to throw at you is cumulative trauma disorders, or CTDs. CTDs may include muscle strains or tears, ligaments, sprains, joint and tendon inflammation, pinched nerves, and spinal disc degeneration. Many work-related MSDs or CTDs have included medical conditions such as lower back pain, tension neck syndrome, carpal tunnel syndrome, rotator cuff syndrome, trigger finger tarsal tunnel syndrome, sciatica, tendonitis, and many more. CTDs and MSDs account for about 33% of lost workdays, according to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. 1 out of every $3 is spent on workers' compensation claims, and they have increased 7-fold over the last 10 years. So this information comes from the National Safety Council. As we can see, musculoskeletal non-fatal injuries and illnesses resulted in about 247,620 days away from work, with a median of about 14 days. What this information does not take into account is the time other employees had to fill in for the injured worker. There's an emotional toll on the injured worker and their family, and the time spent working with the medical team to rehabilitate the injured worker so they may return to work in their full capacity. MSDs also affect the performance of employees. Some examples may include decreased production from employees being out of work, decreased efficiency from employees being injured or not able to work to full capacity due to their injury, poor quality products. When you're short-staffed, and other areas like quality control or verification of specs may be missed, and products or services may be lacking attention to detail. Increased response time to fill orders, And last but not least, damage to property may be a result. Let's take a look at Amerisure's average cost for 3 common repetitive motion injuries. Please keep in mind that the dollar amounts reflected on the next few slides are for the non-complicated or basic cases. Surgery, physical therapy, and other treatments may increase the cost of the claim significantly, as we discussed previously with the 24-year-old worker whose seemingly basic injury totaled over $900,000. Let's begin with the cost associated with an elbow strain. The average cost is approximately $5,000, and this includes indemnity, medical bills, administration, and other expenses. Now let's look at the cost of a shoulder strain. A non-complicated claim total will average around $8,000. And last but not least, you'll see the average cost of a lumbar or lower back strain. A typical claim will average $7,500. So as you can see, the 3 most common MSD claims, the elbow, the shoulder, and the back, can be very costly to your company. However, if prevention measures are in place, those large dollar amounts can decrease significantly. A couple things to keep in mind. The indemnity cost can be higher or lower depending on the average weekly wage of your injured worker. And also, we all know that medical costs are certainly rising, and they can vary significantly, especially if the employee has underlying health conditions. So our goal is to assist in the mitigation of these injuries. So let's see what you know about when those mitigation efforts began. And Jean-Lee?
All right, thank you so much, Stacy. So we have another little trivia question for you that we're going to launch here shortly. And here we go. So when did ergonomic risk mitigation first begin in civilization? Was it in 1976, 1020 AD, 400 BC, or maybe it's still not being used? I'd like to see what you all think. All right, I see some answers coming in. Really interested to see what this is going to be. We'll give you all about another 10 seconds here. Okay, and I'm going to end the poll, and then let's share those results. All right, those are some pretty good guesses here. Well, believe it or not, ergonomic risk mitigation first began as early as 400 BC. So ancient Greek civilization used what we now consider ergonomic principles in the design of tools, jobs, and workplaces. Archaeologists have actually found drawings and paintings of chairs and contoured backrests and hand tools that resemble designs that we still use today. So even then, very important information there that was recognized. So always really good to know. So we know the Greeks started ergonomic mitigation, but where are we today? And luckily, we've advanced quite a bit since those days. So in the next part of this presentation, we're going to be looking at innovations in technology that will help mitigate many of the ergonomic hazards that a lot of you encounter in your specific organizations or in your industries. And we're going to take an overall look at several other technologies available. But today, we're going to spend quite a bit of time focusing on the application TuMeke. So that's what we're here today to review. So just to kind of get started, let's talk about some of the ergonomic technologies that are currently available for use. We have wearables, phone apps, exoskeleton supports, and visual assessments. And so these are just some of the different types that focus on ergonomic risk, and they're being used far more frequently in lots of industries as their availability and familiarity with these applications increases. So wearables are small devices that employees usually affix to their clothing at the waistline. You might see some that go at the top of the spine as well. And the devices are programmed to provide real-time haptic alerts to employees as soon as they're in an unsafe ergonomic position. So the haptic alerts are typically like a vibration, or they could be a sound, but these units sit on a charging station when they're not in use. So it's really up to the employee to remember to put the unit on and to comply with the guiding alerts to correct their position. So there's a dashboard that the employer can go to with these technologies that shows the users, scores and how they're performing over time, but very employee driven to be able to make sure the technology is actually working. Phone apps are similar. to wearables, they'll monitor ergonomic positions as well. The difference being that there's not typically real-time alerts with the phone apps, right? So it's going to gather data over time to assess which tasks have the higher risk frequency. And then you have to go to the dashboard to relay the information to the employer, and it'll show, an individual employee's or team's score related to ergonomic activities and safety. But again, technology is going to be really dependent on the employee to use it in order for that employer to get the feedback. Exoskeletons, like we see here with the gentleman in the yellow, kind of looking like Iron Man, they typically focus on assisting employees with lifting. So this technology is not meant to monitor body movements, but it actually provides physical support to the wearer. So this tech would be really beneficial for facilities that have to manually move and lift materials frequently throughout the day. And we see it on construction sites as well, but it again only works if the employee is willing to wear it during those activities. And then last, we have visual-based assessments or AI. And those are fixed cameras in facilities that monitor, forklift activity, slip, trip, fall hazards like debris on the ground or liquid on the floor. And it can also recognize if an employee is not wearing the correct PPE and alert the employer that way. But the cameras are also used to monitor ergonomic exposure. So it runs a software that monitors, employees during their operations, and it captures their safe and unsafe movements. And it's an excellent application in a warehouse or distribution center. They can be a little bit pricey. So we kind of just want to lay all of these out for you, because the main point on it is that we want to show you why the application we're going to talk about is a really simple way to implement risk mitigation for ergonomics and very cost effective as well. So which industries are going to benefit from ergonomic technology? And I think we all kind of guessed it here, but one of the most obvious applications for ergo technology is for use in warehousing and distribution, as most people would figure. With continuous lifting and twisting of materials, with reaching and twisting while packaging products, any of these motions can lead to significant injury. So that's where applying it's going to be, really beneficial. Manufacturing exposures are essentially the same as the warehouse distribution, but in addition to moving materials in manufacturing, there could be applications at workstations where there's poor ergonomic positioning and design to be able to complete the task. And we're going to see some videos in a little bit that we'll talk about that a little bit more. Of course, healthcare facilities, I think that's where everybody probably starts to think when we say the term ergonomics, because not everybody feels like ergonomics applies to their specific industry, and it does. But healthcare is where we see that implemented the most. So when we talk about healthcare, we're talking about all sorts of different facilities. We're talking about hospitals, assisted living, rehab centers, home healthcare especially. And each of those has unique ergonomic exposures, from housekeeping, through dining room areas, food preparation, maintenance. And of course, the biggest ergonomic exposure in healthcare is going to be patient movement. So moving humans, right? From lying position to sitting, from sitting to standing and walking. That's where the biggest challenge is going to be for ergonomics in healthcare. So utilizing any ergonomic technology could go a long way in preventing MSDs. AmeriShare Risk Management can show you some that we believe would be useful in any of those tasks performed in healthcare facility, in warehouse, distribution, in manufacturing. And so if after today you have questions on those, make sure to reach out to your risk management consultant as well. We're also going to talk about how this is applicable to construction, right? We don't immediately think of construction as having a lot of truly ergonomic exposures, but imagine having yourself or one of your coworkers pick up a 50-pound, 12-foot ladder. It'd be really easy to incorrectly twist or lift while moving an object like that, especially when it's awkwardly shaped as well, right? Which we were talking about that a little bit earlier. So at this time, we actually have a claim involving a young construction worker who was loading hand tools into the back of his pickup truck. And that's the poll question we talked about a little bit earlier. And that twisting and lifting motion led to 2 different back surgeries. And that cost, it's actually over $900,000 from that poll question. It's actually at $930,000 right now. So if we place workers in wearable technologies, we might be able to prevent these kinds of injuries due to the real-time guidance they would get from the devices. All right, lots of information for you there. So we're going to get to the point of today's webinar, and that is talking about this particular application called TuMeke. So we're going to take a deep dive into what this can offer for your particular organization. It's a visual-based assessment tool. AmeriSure does partner with TuMeke as a solution for some of our policyholders, so you can get a lot of information from our risk management department on this. And again, I just want you to remember, it's not going to be the solution for ergonomic risk, but it is definitely a solution, and it's a very good solution and cost-effective solution to implement. So that's why we chose that today to highlight for you all. So let's get started and see what this has to, what information we can get. So how does TuMeke work? Well, it does use your phone. You can measure and automatically track the safety of employees without stopping production, because what it does is you actually use it to take a video of the task that you're trying to assess for ergonomic risk. So once you do that, you're able to upload that file into a TuMeke phone app or on the desktop, and then it gets processed by their artificial intelligence, their AI software, to analyze all sorts of joint, back, lifting positions. And then it lists the injury risk for you for that task. And it gives you an opportunity to hone in on where the area of risk is. Is it a different lift? Is it a shoulder, that's going to be possibly targeted for injury? And then it gives you options on how you can actually correct that. It'll give you a very visual-based way to assess it. So here's an example of a normal work task that's been analyzed by the TuMeke software. So this video was taken of this person lifting the box and placing it on the table. And you'll note that TuMeke is able to blur the employee's face here as well. So there's complete anonymity if that's something that you're worried about with taking a video of your employees. But if a facility is concerned about filming, proprietary equipment or products, TuMeke is actually capable of blurring out the entire background. And we're going to show you an example of that a little bit later. So again, those are things we want to kind of get out of the way if that's in any way inhibiting people from wanting to use a video-based application like this one. But the most important thing here is you can see that there's varying colors in the assessment here. There's red, there's orange, there's green. And that's going to be indicating bad, questionable, and very good positions during this particular task. So it's going to measure not only the spinal positions, but the shoulder and arm positions as well. And then we can tell where this particular individual doing this task repetitively, would possibly be at risk for having an MSD injury from doing this over and over again. So why does TuMeke work? Well, again, anonymous, so we don't have to worry about, having people's faces out there, especially if they're really shy about being in the camera or in front of the camera. It can also blur out, like we said, the black backgrounds, any logos that come with you all. So very, very good software to protect that with your company and employees. You don't have to rely on employees using the technology like you do with the wearables for this to work, because it is going to be driven by the employer taking these videos. So we're not waiting for the employee to have to put this on to get the data that you need. It's not going to stop your workflow. You can actually take the video of the task during the normal course of the day. And that's something that our risk management consultants can work with you and train you how to do to make sure you're getting the best angles. So again, not stopping any production time. It's unbiased as well, because the analysis is completed by the TuMeke application, like I said, utilizing that AI software. And it's really simple to understand. It's visual, green is good, red is bad. And then the reports that come out with it, their review are really readily understandable as well. So easy information out to you to be able to assess your workplace. So here's a version of the TuMeke analysis that we were talking about with the completely blurred background. And we're just taking a look at it so you can see the extent of privacy that's available on this application if you decide to use it. All right, so how can it be used? How can you use the data once you get going with it? So a lot of our policyholders who have used this, and a lot of TuMeke users will use it for training of new employees or refresher training for experienced employees. They'll use it to assess new work activities and preemptively prevent those MSDs as well. So if you have a new operation going on, you can start to do what essentially like a job hazard analysis. Is there anything else we need to do here? Is there something we need to change before we get this new process rolling with our workforce? So it not only shows the incorrect motions, but it's going to show employees completing tasks using proper ergonomic practices too. So it can be used for positive reinforcement. You know, everything is green on here. There's low risk. It's a good way to show employees that they're doing something right and give an example to other employees. It can help a company set up proper ergonomic stations prior to starting a task. And we're going to talk about that in an upcoming video too. It can help a company assess whether they want to allot funds to address a certain ergonomic exposure. So if you film a specific task, you can recognize the area with the highest exposure, and then you can put funding towards that to address that specific issue. So you're not just, you know, blatantly spending money on certain areas where you may not be really making the impact you need to make. So just some other ways that this can be used for you and your company. So this video here is another analysis. We've been doing the lifting part of it, but this one isn't lifting, right? It's showing the exposures in leaning and twisting all day long. And here's where you can use it for workstation setup, because you can see in this particular video, this individual is about 6'2". This table is really low. So he's having to stoop quite a bit to get down to do his work all day long. And you can imagine being in that position all day is going to lead to sore back, sore shoulders, sore neck from having to look down. So if we were taking a look at this and you were working with, you know, whoever is helping your safety directors or your risk management consultants, one of the things we would use this for is that we're recognizing here is to be able to correct his workstation, right? We want to correct that workstation to the worker. Maybe get him a higher table so he's able to stand up straight and move in this way instead of having to stoop down all day long. So very important things to clarify here, to look at and to use to fix those issues in your workplace. In this slide, we have another example of a video that would be shared with a TuMeke client. So again, lifting, taking to the truck to place the box there, and taking it back down. So lots of things that this person would obviously be doing over and over again. If we gave this video to our client after using a TuMeke assessment, they can take the video and then we would look at a personalized dashboard for this particular video to show them risk scores, whether there's any poor postures, except if there's any acceptable ergonomic techniques in what he's doing right now. And so we want to use this video to take a look at what those reports would be for. And I just want to point out, you'll probably notice this individual looks the same in all of these, and it is. It's from the same person. So this individual in this one, as you've seen in some of the other videos, is doing a lot of different tasks that have ergonomic risk to them. So being able to fix all of those risks in this person's workday is probably going to lead to the less possibility of this worker being injured and others who perform the same task. So this is what data looks like. So this is kind of the first part here of what you would see from that video, what the information you would get. Each individual recording tells you specifically what the risk is, where it exists, how risky each task is as well. So you know exactly where to focus. So if you were getting this report, the first thing you would see here is they would tell you, you know, how long the video went, what they were doing, and what type of assessment was used. There's a few different types of assessments within TuMeke that are used for ergonomic assessment. One of them is what we call REBA. One is RULA. There's another NIOSH one. We're not going to get into those today because they get very technical, but if TuMeke is something that you're interested in, our consultants can work with you to understand which of those assessment types would be best for your specific task. The other thing that this is going to point out is what the risk of musculoskeletal disorders is going to be. And for this particular video that we just saw, the risk is going to be high if they do that repetitively, you know, as their work task from day to day. So this is saying this person in their current state is at high risk of having an MSD injury. And it's also going to tell you which body part are most at risk here. So you can see, it's saying the trunk is probably about a 4. The upper arm area is at a 5, so very high risk there. Lower arm about a 2, but in the current position that he's lifting in, neck and legs are about 1 and 2, so they're in the green, they're okay. And then you can take these numbers and you can compare them to the action levels down here. So the action levels are going to say, if it's a 1, posture is acceptable, person's working with minimal risk, really nothing to fix here. A 5, like for that upper arm here, or I'm sorry, a 5 on this side here is going to say, investigate more, changes are likely required. I'm sorry, that was action 3, forgive me. Action level 5 is investigation and changes are required immediately. So that's saying we need to fix something about how he's using his upper arm during that lifting task. All right, so still using that video as our basis for this report. It can tell you what percentage of the recording your employee is engaged in really risky behavior. And again, what body part's going to be most and least affected. So if we're looking at the overall assessment here, 79% of what he was doing is likely not going to be putting him at risk, but there's a small percentage here that's going to be the risky part. And most of that is going to be, if you look at these areas here, are going to be lower arm, upper arm, trunk area, where he's may likely be at risk for ergonomic injury after repetitive, frequent activity doing that throughout his work days. And then on this slide, this is a third part of the report. It's going to tell you precisely what part of the recorded task is the most risky part of the activity and what the benefits of changing that particular motion is going to be. So let's take a look at what this says. So that upper arm angle is what it kind of honed in on. If that lift, if the way that he's using that part of his body in this lift, if that gets corrected, then there's a 20% reduction in overall risk score, meaning there's going to be a 20% less possibility of him having an injury because of the way he's doing this. So it gives you all of that information here. So again, you're not wasting time trying to figure out what we need to fix. This is telling you exactly what you need to fix, and you can modify those operations based on the information here. So a lot of information, again, something that our consultants can go through with you, but these are very, very useful, easy to use information. So that being said, does this actually work? And here's where we start getting into some of the studies of how this has been done. So this case study here is actually from TuMeke. So one of the largest distribution companies in the world, and I won't tell you which one, I'm sure you can probably guess as you go along, decided to utilize TuMeke technology. And clearly a distribution facility would have a wide variety of ergonomic injuries due to manual handling of different shaped and weighted products, right? So all of those things that are going to easily contribute to those types of injuries. So this company utilized TuMeke to build 3D models of the body movements their employees were performing, like as they were doing these tasks. And the company was able to reduce MSD injuries by 68% in just 6 months. And that was a projected year savings of $194,000 in claims injuries. So to see that kind of reduction in injuries happen in just under a year, is impressive. In 6 months is unheard of and amazing. And so that's what this type of really simple technology can do for companies. It's, again, easy to utilize, easy to understand, very, very cost effective, especially if you're a MayorShare policyholder. We can talk about that going forward during our Q&A session or after this webinar. And so that's a lot of information, a lot of numbers thrown at you. I'm going to hand it back over to Stacy, and she's going to go over some of our real life cases here at MayorShare.
Thank you, Anjali. So as Anjali just mentioned, at MayorShare, we have had the opportunity to study 3 different industries and develop solutions based on the data that we were able to gather. So let's take a second and review some of those. So the first one that we're going to discuss is actually a distribution warehouse. They were having a significant number of injuries related to moving and packaging some auto parts. It's important to note that these injuries were not always related to how heavy the part was. So we were asked to come in, record some of the tasks, and then send them to TuMeke to be analyzed. We were also asked for assistance in quantifying the exposure and performing a cost-benefit analysis of the various solutions, just in an effort to reduce these exposures. So the TuMeke tool was used on several positions and highlighted where those exposures were the greatest. Plus, we were looking for an easy to implement solution to the various hazards. The company was so impressed by these results that they then hired a videographer to help with the creation of safety videos using the TuMeke stick figure that we had shown earlier in those videos. So what was the solution? We were asked to return, and others were asked to perform lifts using good lifting practices and poor lifting practices. The videos were processed with the TuMeke application and then used in multiple safety videos that run continuously at their various warehouse locations. These videos have now been viewed by hundreds of employees, and the technology did provide the ability to proactively address areas of concern where some of those known issues were occurring, and we could also provide very specific and targeted training. So this is a wonderful example of utilizing this technology to prevent future injuries from occurring using data from the actual policyholder's own operations. So these steps will assist in eliminating MSDs at their warehouse or in their workplace. So let's take a look at a second example. Preventing MSDs for the construction industry may be very difficult to control. After all, a job site is an evolving environment and presents a variety of exposures at any given time. So because of this, one of Amerisure's construction companies was looking to quantify those lifting hazards to employees while also providing training on how to lift properly. So after speaking with an Amerisure risk management consultant and learning how to properly shoot the videos of the employees performing tasks and what information they needed to gather, they actually provided the video and the data to us, to Amerisure, for processing. So the Amerisure risk management consultant then processed the video, created a report, and then sent it back to our policyholder. So the solution, after the company reviewed that information, they then utilized that stick figure again and the report to create safety training materials for all of their supervisors and employees. So this is another great example of utilizing specific data to attack known exposures and, again, provide targeted training in an effort to prevent those future injuries. So here is an additional breakdown of all the assessments that Amerisure has completed with our policyholders and our insureds. So it's rather alarming that 44% of the activities that we monitored were listed as very high risk activities. So the good news from this is once we know where those musculoskeletal disorders are present, we can address it by changing a behavior, changing an activity, or even changing the workspace, as in the video that Anjali previously showed you with the tall guy and the short workstation.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I just want to point out, I think it is something to note here that 44% of all of the tasks that we monitored were high risk. So that just goes to show you that whether you think there's ergonomic or there may not be ergonomic risk in your facilities, there likely could be in some of those operations. So definitely worth an assessment if you're interested in it. So how Amerisure, we are incredibly invested in helping with ergonomic solutions, and we do partner with vendors from time to time. So again, TuMeke is one of them, but we just kind of wanted to let you all know what's on the horizon for our policyholders. Amerisure was recently granted a grant from the National Safety Council in collaboration with Amazon to figure out solutions to prevent ergonomic injuries in industry. And so one of the applications that we're using as part of this grant to be able to do that is TuMeke, but we're also piloting a product called HeroWear. So this is a different type of exoskeleton, basically, and we're currently working with a few of our policyholders to test this out. to see how it works after we do those TuMeke assessments, and see if this is something that's going to be viable for us to be able to roll out in partnership with our policyholders in the near future. So stay tuned for more information on that. And if you want to find out more about AmeriSure's dedication to preventing these types of injuries and helping our policyholders move away from those very costly claims related to MSDs, take a look at our this quarter's current Safety Connect issue. There's a great article in there all about it and what we're doing to move forward on that end. So to be fair, again, we've talked about TuMeke. We kind of let you know why we do partner with them, but we did talk about some other types of solutions that are out there before we started talking about TuMeke. And so even though we don't endorse these any particular vendor, these are a lot of other good vendors that are out there for wearables, for visual AI, for phone applications that target ergonomic assessment, and other different types of exoskeletons, including that HeroWear that we talked about. And I want to point this out because, like we said at the beginning, TuMeke is a very great ergonomic solution, but it is not the solution for everybody. And depending on the complexity of your operations, something on, in one of these buckets here may be a better match for you than TuMeke, but TuMeke is always a good place to start, especially since you have accessibility to it through being an AmeriSure policyholder. So just wanted to let you know that these are some other ones to explore if you're interested in there. And again, even though we don't endorse them, they are really good products to take a look at for your facilities. Okay, so thank you very much, Stacy. We wish we could have had Kathleen on today. She's fantastic, and she's going to be great again to reach out to after today's webinar. If you have any other questions, she and Stacy can definitely answer them. I hope you all enjoyed participating in the webinar. We're going to go ahead and see if we have any questions here. And just a reminder, if you do have questions, you can go ahead and type them into that Q&A box in the control panel now, and we can answer those. So I don't see any questions in there right now, and that's okay. Again, we threw out a lot of info. So as you start to think about those questions, if you'd like to get a hold of us, you can either reach out to myself, to Stacy, or to Kathleen, or you can use the QR code on this slide here, scan it with your phone. It'll take you to our WebRM platform, and you can put in your information and your questions in there after today, and we're happy to answer them. You can also access WebRM through our SureConnect portal if you're a policyholder or if you're one of our partner agencies. Go ahead and stick your questions in there. It'll come to us and we can direct you to the consultant that you typically work with, or to Stacy and Kathleen to help with those. And we did get something in. Oh, thank you very much, Kevin Smith. I appreciate that. Very nice. A nice, good job from Kevin Smith for us. So we appreciate that. And we always love having you join us, and we'll see you at the next one. Thanks so much.